Welcome to the fastest daf in town. Today, Masechtas Zevachim daf Mem Zayin. We're going to begin in the middle of Mem Vav Amud Beis by the Mishnah. L'shem shisha devarim hazevach nizbach. Literally, for the name of 6 different things, a carbon is brought. L'shem zavach. It has to be brought for the right carbon. L'shem zoivach, for the right person. L'shem Hashem, it has to be brought for the sake of Hashem, excluding, let's say, Avodah Zarah. We said L'shem Zayvach, it's excluding some Shinim B'Kodesh, that you have some other carbon in mind. L'shem Ishim, it has to be for the sake of the fire on the Mizbeach. L'shem Reach, L'shem Nichayach. Rashi says, the Gemara is going to explain what that's coming to exclude. V'achatas v'asham l'shem chet. When it comes to achatas and oila, for the person who's bringing it as well, like they have to know the sin that they're bringing it for. Rabbi Yosef, mishlo hayibalibo l'shem echad mikolelu kosher. Even if you don't really have all the stuff in your mind, everything's done stam, it's fine. Shutanai based in she'ein hamachshava hoylechas el acher ha'oived. That we say that all the machshava is, says Rashi, havi shelo l'shmoi. Let's say it was shelo l'shma, afagav the balam armi l'shmo, even though the owners say had the right intentions, v'amidihu, v'abididei talia milsa. It's not totally on him, it's totally on the one doing the avoda. So it's not, if you're the one bringing it, and you're just a non-Kohen, you don't really know all these dinim, you don't have to worry. Hopefully the Kohen who's doing the actual avoda is aware of all these things. It says, Maybe Huda Marav, Oila has to be l'shem Oila. It has to be known it's for the Shem Oila, and fine. So Lafuki l'shem Shlomim. It has to be for the sake of an Oila, not for, let's say, a Shlomim, which of course is not completely burnt. Doloi Isha Lashem, because it's not completely burnt as a carbon. Ishim Lafuki Kavva Doloi. It's excluding something which is completely burnt. It says Rashi, Amnas Lasoiso Chatichos Sluyas B'Gecholim. You're going to make pieces roasted up with coals. Reach L'Shem Reach Lafuki Ivarim limbs Chitzolan V'Holan Doloi, that were roasted first and then put on the mizbeach. Yom Rabbi Huda Marav, Evarim Chitzolan V'Olon Ein Behen Mishum Reach. So you have to actually put it on the mizbeach. You can't like pre-cook it, if you will. Nichayach L'Shem Hanachas Ruach. So it has to be Hanachas Ruach for the sake of Reach Nichayach. L'Shem Mishayimer B'Hayoyim Kadosh Baruch Hu. You have a chatas which is shechted for the sake of an oila, psul, and we know this already. We saw this at the beginning of some sechta a long time ago. L'shem chulin kshera. However, if a chatas was shechted for the sake of a chulin because it's so vite, so that actually is kosher. Rabbi Lezer, my time at Rav. Why does he say this? V'lo yichalas k'dshe b'nei Yisrael kadoshim mechalin kadoshim. It has to be from one carbon to the other. But if you have a machshav of chulin for chatas, no. So Masav Rabba Rabbi Yosef mi shelo hayabalibu l'shem echad mikol elu kosher. We said it's still kosher. Shoot tonight based in time of shelo hayabalibu klal. You had no thought. It's like stam hayabalibu l'shem chulin puzzle. Sounds like it's puzzle if you do have another thought. Dilma loy haya klal kosher umaratza. Ha haya belibo Hashem chulin kosher v'ena maratza. So when we say it's kosher, maybe it's just not maratza. Amar belezer chata sheshachtel Hashem chulin kshera, as we said before. Hashem chulin psula. However, a chatas which was shechted, even though it was Hashem chulin is kosher, mishum chulin. Says Rashi, Ksavar Shehem Chulin. If you mamish thought that this was Chulin, then it's puzzle. The Hainu Misasik B'Devarim Acherim. They knew us bikachim. Like you just thought you were barbecuing. Not just that it was a chatas, and you again, I'm gonna let it'll be like a chulin. No, you mamish knows chulin. So then it's possible. As we continue to Mem Zayin Madala, how do we know if a person has absolutely no kavanah? Like you're just thinking about something totally foreign, or you're thinking it's like just barbecuing chul and food. Shenem Rav Shachat has ben a bakr lifnei Hashem. Ache shchitu l'shem ben bakr. Has to at least be for the sake of a carbon. Armalei zubi adenu hi l'akiv menayin. So armalei l'ritzonchem tizbachuhu l'dadchem zavchu. Okay, so a pretty interesting point. Sheina machshava haylechas ela achar ha'ovid. We go after the person doing the avoda. Masnisin deloki aitan de sanya Rabbi Lezer, Rabbi Yosi Shemaiti. I heard Shabbalim Mefalgin, that even the owner, not the one who's doing the avoda, not the Kohen, but the owner could cause pigul. Rabbi my time Rabbi Lezer, Rabbi Yosi, because the pasuk says v'hikriv hamakriv. So it's an interesting language. It sounds like not just the one who's doing it, but also the one who brought it, namely the Baal, can make pigul. Rabbi Lezer, Rabbi Yosi, Rabbi Lezer, Rabbi Shimon, Rabbi Lezer, Kul Svirlahu, Zemachashiv Ze'oived, Havi Machshava. Even though the Baal has the Machshava and the Kohen is even B'shtika, it's still a Machshava. Rabbi Lezer, Rabbi Yosi, Hada Amran, with regard to pigul. Rabbi Lezer did not. Hashaychid l'ovi kachavim. Let's say a person shechs for ovi kachavim. Shchitas kshera. For Rabbi Lezer paisel. Now, what does that mean? Says Rashi. It's explained over there. Shestam machshavas kachavim lovas kachavim. Normally, their machshav is for idol worship. V'afgav delo iu shachad le paisel. Even though you're the one that shechted it, so you didn't have in mind avodah zarah. It doesn't matter. It's still considered to be pasul. That's number two. Rav Shimon ben Lezer, the non-klal omer Rav Shimon ben Lezer, kol she'ein kashel atzniya. Anyone is found in Masechta Shabbos. For example, let's say we're talking about dam nida, something which is asur b'hana, that you don't put aside. Ve'ein matzniyin kamahu, it has like no measurement. So Hokshur Blazev Esnu, let's say for whatever reason someone designated it, even though you didn't necessarily want it, but the other person who had that machshava will cause that now that you bring it out, that you're going to be chayiv for bringing it on Shabbos into Rosh Hashanah. The fact that he designated it as something of chashivas. So those are three answers. Turvayu Isulhud Rabbi Lezer Rabbi Yosi. Hashta b'chutz, when we're talking about Shabbos, when we're talking about avodah zarah, amrinan bifnim, amrinan, so bifnim boy. So then certainly bifnim will be the same thing, says Rashi. It's not explicit. Regarding karbanos, which are written explicitly, then certainly they would hold such a thing. Rabbi Lezer, Rabbi Yosi, Leisahu de Tervayu, maybe you would not hold them both. Maybe this whole notion is only by karbanos, which is mentioned by pigul, but not by these two other dinim, by shechting l'shem vodas kachavim, or on ovi kachavim, or bringing out something on Shabbos. And Rav Shimon ben Lezer, Islay Rabbi Lezer, hashta v'Shabbos amrina vodas kachavim b'boy. So if we say on Shabbos, it counts. So by avodas zarah, certainly, as Rashi says, the vodas kachavim dumi the avodas penim. It has some similarities to avoda inside. Chaya bar Rachmana, as it's brought down in Sanhedrin, Zavich Elokim Yecharam, built Hashem avodas haruyas l'makim. Chaya bar avodas kachavim, ben shedarka b'kach, ben she'ein darka b'kach, hilchach Okay. Rabbi Lezer leis l'Rav Shimon ben Lezer dilma bonus chachavim hu de'amrinan kein b'fnim alo Shabbos malachas machshavos asur Torah, and therefore maybe that's not necessarily the same. Hanulach beis Shammai, Hanulach beis Shammai, Hanulach beis Shammai. Also question 7. Heichem esinu zem machashav zel oisa havi machshava by pigol, by shchitas ovi chachavim, and also when it comes to hokshu lezev asnil uva acher b'hoitziu chayiv. Okay. All right. Finally, we get to the parak I've been waiting for. Right, parak the Zevachim is so hard, so you think Eizim and Kaiman, you know it because we say it all the time as karbanos in the morning. Let's see how well we know it. Eizim and Kaiman shel Zevachim. So we already know this a little bit from what we've seen in this Masechta. So where do we actually bring these karbanos? So Rashi says. Well, first let's continue. So kashi kadashim shichitasim asafan. So that includes a chatas, an asham, an oila, shalmit, sibor. There's obviously differences in their matan damim. We know, of course, an oila is put on the bottom of the chata sikra, and the chatas is above. We know, which is one thing by chatas. Also, it's 4 places, so their matan damim is different. But nonetheless, all the shchitas have to be in the north, as we saw before, because we don't want to embarrass someone who did a chet. So maybe people think, oh, maybe he's just bringing an oil. Parvasar shel Yom Kippurim, that the Kohen Gadol brings shchitas masafin as well. And the Gemara is going to explain that a little bit more, and then let's just see. Is there Rashi? Okay, v'kibul dama b'klisharis b'safin. So also when it comes to the Kabbalah, just you do the shechita, so the Kabbalah Sadam also is in the north. V'daman toin hazayal bein habadim. So when it comes to the seir and the par, so it's you sprinkle it bein abadim in the Kaddish Kadashim, says Rashi, an oimid bein shnei badi aharon in the Kaddish Kadashim. Umaz echel amalo v'zayin lamata keneged uvyishal kapiris v'lo havi noigin ba. Okay, who doesn't touch it. Okay. Anyway, so this of course is talking about the par v'sar shel Yom Kippurim v'al paroiches v'omizbach hazahav, which we said already. That when it comes to all those blood applications, which there's a lot, there's a question, is it 42, 48, right? There's a lot of them. There's 8 of each, so 16 inside, 16 in the Kodesh, and then on the Mizbech Hazav, the question is, you mix them together, you don't, that's a whole machlokas over there. But it's sprinkled in all these places. Matanachas mehen makeves. Unlike, as we saw in Perek Beis Shammai, where when it comes to the karbanos of achatas and all these things, which are the mizbeach achitzain, they only have to do 1 blood application to be yotzei, even though Beis Shammai does say 2 for achatas. Beis Hillel says straight across the board 1. That's not when it comes to the mizbeach inside. Everything has to be done properly. Shiri hadam ha'yishevach ha'yisaid meravi shel mizbeach achitzain. As we know, the leftover blood is spilled on the yisod because that's blood that was used. We said if you have blood which wasn't used, or let's say you had 4 kosos, it was a machlokas. If you only use 1, did the other 3 get spilled into the yisod or to the amma? So this is, again, it also discusses whether that's ma'akev. It says over here, actually it says beferish in this piece that when it comes to the shirayim, if you don't do it, it's not a problem because it's not ma'akev the kapara. Okay. Parim Nisrafim, Asir Manisrafim, which the par and Nisrafim is the par El Davar, in which the Tzibor sinned, the majority of them. So the Basin, let's say it's the Basin, it's the 3 with Machlokas in Mesechtas Horius, but let's just say that 1 par is brought. In the par Kohen Mashiach also made a mistake. The Kohen Gadol has to bring a par. Shein Nechon Kohanim. In this situation, Rashi says it's not eaten by the Kohen. It's completely burned. El Nisrafin Chutzur Shalayim. These are actually burnt outside of Yerushalayim. So when it comes to the Parim and Esrafim, Asirim and Esrafim, so that's the Parim and Esrafim, which is the Par Ha'olam and the Par Kohen Mashiach. The Asirim and Esrafim is the Seiri Avodas Kachavim. When it comes to someone who worships Avodah Zarah, that there's a chiyuv of having to bring a carbon as well. This is specifically, the Sanhedrin makes a mistake regarding Avodah Zarah. So also, it's comparable to the Par Helam Davar Shel Tzibor, that's Shar Veros. So, Shechitas Masafin. Also, that has to be shechted in the north. Kibul Dam B'Kli Sharas Masafin. V'daman Ta'on Hazaya Al Parayches. Vel Mizbeach HaZahav. So these do not require Bein Abadim. We don't go into the Kadosh Kadashim like we do by the Par and the Sar Sheyam Kippurim, because it doesn't say that. However, when it comes to these other ones, they do sprinkling on the Parayches, on the curtain, as well as the Mizbeach HaZahav, as we continue to Mem Zayin and Beis. Okay, let's see. Matana achas mehen makeves, as we said before, when it comes to the blood applications inside the Mizbeach HaZahav, you have to do the entire thing properly. Shirei hadam hayishavich liyasoid maravi shel Mizbeach HaChitzayin. Again, all the leftover blood is spilled into the side. The imulas lo ikev against am ha'akev elu even nisravim abeis hadeshen. As we said, we take it out of Yerushalayim, the leftover ashes. So the same place where the deshen, the Chumas HaDeshen, where that's brought outside, so too when it comes to the Parv Nesrafim, when it comes to the Parv Esayir, when it comes to the Par El Davar Shel Tzibor. So all this is brought outside. Okay. It's brought Chutz Yerushalayim. Okay, and that's the first Mishnah, Nezim and Kaiman. So, V'nisni Nam V'kibul Dama V'kli Sharas B'Safin. So, why doesn't it mention that, right? Gabi Stam Shel Kachi Kedoshim V'kibul Dama Ki Heichi Detanish Chitasan. So, it says Kachi Kedoshim Shchitasan B'Safin. But then it doesn't say the Kibul Dama B'Kli Sharas B'Safin. It goes straight to the Par of V'Sar Shel Yom Kippurim. So why don't we also say by the Kachi Kedoshim that the Kabbalah Saddam should also be B'Safin? For instance, Kivan the Ika Ashim Atzaira, the Kibul Damo Biyadhu Shiare. So since in this case the Ashim Atzaira is different, as we know that the person is needs to have the applications on his thumbs by the Shar Niknor, which doesn't have the same level of Kedusha. We talked about him putting his hands in. We talked about Bia B'Miksa Shema Bia. Those are the whole machlokas over there. So we left it out because the Kimel Dama Biyadhu. In that situation, the Kabbalah is Biyad because you need to apply it onto the person. Says Rashi, Ashim Atzar Kibul Dama Biyad. K'diyofa Kaman Shem Kabul Dama L'Toich Kapoi. Okay. V'lo Katani Lo Kaman Ashim Nazir Ashim Atzayra. It says Beferish. We're going to see when it talks about Ashim Atzayra. It says that it's B'Safon. So why doesn't it just mention it over here too? We don't mention it because of Ashim Atzayra. Ashim Atzayra is also Kli Sharis is B'Safon. So Mikar Savar. Originally, we thought Kibul Damo Biyadhu, that the Kabbalah is with the hand. So Shari left it out. Kivandu Sagile El Bakli, but now we realize it also needs a Kli, Hadar Tanya. Because actually, when it comes to Ashim Atzayra, you actually need to have two Kohanim by the Kabbalah. Because one is going to do the Kabbalah Saddam and the Kli Sharas B'Safain, and the other one is Makabel Biyad. Tisanya, V'lakach, Yachab Kli, Talmud Nasan, Manastina Be'etzba Shel Kayin, Avlakicha Be'etzba Shel Kayin. He uses his finger. So Yachal Afal Mizbeach Kain. So too when it comes to the application of the Ashim Atzayra's Dam on the Mizbeach, Talmud Lomer kichatas ha'asham. Who machatas tu'una kli, avasham tu'un kli. Achatas always requires a kli shara, so to an asham, so to an asham atzaira. So what happens? So interestingly enough, nimsas ata oimer, asham atzaira shnei kohanim mikablim asdamo. You need two. Echad biyad ve'echad b'kli. Zeh shekibah b'kli bo eitzam mizbech. So he'll go to the mizbech to apply the blood. Zeh shekibah biyad bo eitzam atzaira. And the other person will have to go to the mitzayra to apply the dam on the mitzayra. Okay. Let's stop there. We have 2 dots. Might as well stop there. It's a short daf. That's okay. Let's look at question 8. Is a carbon kibble damo nasu mishnei kohanim? Asham mitzayra. Everything's the Asham mitzayra. Madua. So it says kivan do mizbech to'in kabbalah b'kli. V'litin al matzayra to'in kabal biyad nimsas ayim d'shnayim mekabel damai. So that's what you need to. Okay, maybe it's a question. TA 27. Ma hadin chatish sheshachta l'shem chulin oy kesaver shehu chulin. Great question. So this was on Mem Vavam Beis, really. So he said. Let's get the words right. Chata sheshachta l'shem oila psula. L'shem chulin is kshera. Okay? However, even that's true, let's say it again. Chata sheshachta l'shem chulin kshera. Mishum chulin is psula. Okay? So, and that is TA 27. Let's mark that down. TA 27. And let's just see what he writes over here. L'shem chulin kshera v'ena maratza, k'savar shu chulin psul dahavli v'sasek, which is what we saw actually in the previous daf on the top of the next Amud. Okay, that's it for that. Kabbalas dam shel asham mitzera biyad o b'kli. It's a good question. It's framed a little bit differently, but it's obviously the same answer. TB 27. The answer really is both. Shvich and Shnei Kohanim achas akabalas the dam b'kli, right? For the mizbeach. Ve'achas biyad litin al mitzayra. Ad kan.